I'm Tammy Levy, and I'm the Director of Product at Kongregate. And today, I'm just going to talk about how we've been able to successfully monetize in-game ads. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Kongregate, what we've done, who we are, and then I'll jump into 4 real case studies from our games. What I'm hoping is that you can take the best practices from these games, apply them to your own games, and hopefully maximize your ad revenue. Let's start with who Kongregate is. For those that you don't know who Kongregate is, we're a web platform and a mobile game publisher. We work with developers from all across the world. On mobile specifically, we've launched about 30 games with a total of a little bit over 77 million installs across iOS and Android. Our latest game, Pocket Politics, it just launched last Thursday. It's a political-themed idle game, and it reached number 3 in the US charts this last weekend. Over half of our games at this point actually have ads in place. And really, 2015 was a year of growth for us. You can see that 20% of our revenue came from ads. Compare that to the previous year where it was less than 1%. And you can see that it actually continues to grow. So at this point, for 2016, we're at 26% of our revenue coming from ads. The best part is that we haven't really seen any decline in our in-app purchase revenue, so this is all just additive revenue. When we talk about ad revenue, it's important to break it down into kind of the key elements that ultimately make this an important part of your income. The first part is the quality of your traffic. That is, how many people click and install the apps that are being advertised in your game. As game developers, you can't really influence this. The next piece is the payout set by the apps. This is how much, say, Candy Crush, Clash of Clans is willing to pay to be advertised in your game. Again, you can't really influence this in your game as a game developer. The last piece is impressions, or number of ad views. The good news is that this is exactly what we can influence. We can really make sure that we're optimizing this and maximizing this to get the most revenue. It's also important to know that there's a number of ad types, and they all behave slightly different, and there are all, optimizations around each of these that are slightly different. First, we have banners. These are the banners at the top or bottom of the screen. Next, we have offer walls. These are sets of offers that players can complete, and if they complete the offer, they'll get some hard currency, premium currency in the game and for exchange of completing the offer. These were more popular on web, but we've actually implemented them in a few of our mobile games and have seen really good results out of doing this. Next, we have interstitials. Those are the annoying pop-ups that you get when you're in the middle of the game and you want to just close them out. But we've had good results with them, and I'm going to talk briefly about them. And last but not least, we have rewarded video. And these are the videos that players choose to watch. And if they watch the whole video, they'll get a reward in exchange. These makes them actually super compelling, and these days they bring in most of the ad revenue. And I'm going to focus on these most of the talk. So let's jump into some games. The first game I'm going to talk about is Epic Skater. It's a skating-themed infinite runner. It was launched by a studio called Your Daily Fill 2 years ago in the summer of 2014. It's a game where you have to master tricks, join combos to try and get the highest score. And this was our first title to generate significant ad revenue. The game did great at launch. We had high volume of installs, really good featuring, but even with these really good results, we felt that the revenue was falling short, mostly the ad revenue. And to be honest, the ads were not so great. As you can see, the call to action is one of many buttons of many colors in the screen, and it can get easily lost. And also, the reward was a small amount of coins, and you couldn't really buy a lot with those coins. And you would get a lot of them just from playing the game. So there was no real compelling reason to watch ads to get these coins. They were not valuable. And last but not least, we did not really have in-depth tracking around the behavior and engagement with ads, which made it even a little bit harder to improve and optimize. So based on this, we knew that we had a lot to improve. And we did. We started launching some updates. 3 weeks after launch, we added interstitials. These would show at the end of runs and only every 5 minutes. The goal of doing that was to minimize the disruption in gameplay, to not annoy people. And the second and bigger update that we did was launch about 4 months after. And on that update, we added a skate shop where players could purchase skateboards, outfits, and more. And this made coins much more valuable. So that reward all of a sudden became more valuable. Also, we added, the biggest gain came from watching an ad to revive. So at the end of your run, you miss that trick, you miss that combo that you were really gonna get, joining a really big chain and get super high score, you would get a second chance to land that combo and get that high score. These improvements resulted in big growth. Before changes, 35% of our game revenue came from ads. After our second release, this became 75% of our revenue. And the best part was that revenue from in-app purchases was not affected, which means that this was all added revenue. Another way to look at this is look at our average revenue per daily active user. You can see that when we launched interstitials, we got a big bump. That's the ads point 1.5. We got a big bump. It kind of fell down a little bit and then stabilized after that. But the second bump, the ads 2.0 release, we didn't really see a decline after that, and it stayed mostly stable. At this point, our DAU was pretty constant, so what this means is that it was all additional revenue. Unfortunately, this came after our DAU had peaked, which means that the game could have generated way more revenue if we had done this sooner. Some lessons that we learned based on this experience. Ads have to be truly integrated into gameplay and into the game experience. You need prominent surfacing so that players can easily watch an ad, and you have to have meaningful rewards so that players want to watch the ads to get that reward. And they can be an afterthought. You don't really want to get them after your DAU peaks and you've missed all that opportunity. The next game that I'm going to talk about is Adventure Capitalist. And this was the next game to generate significant ad revenue. Adventure Capitalist, or AdCap, how we call it, is an idle game where you strive to be the richest magnate of the galaxy. And it was launched by a Canadian studio called Hyper Hippo about a year and a half ago. Who here has played AdCap? So you know, you just want bigger numbers all the time, more. So the game also had a fantastic launch. We got really good featuring, lots of installs, and we made sure that based on the learnings from Epic Skater, we had a few key elements in the game, which resulted in having an excellent ad design, which I'm going to go into detail. And at that point, we started doing more granular stats tracking, which helped us drive even further improvement. Let's look at some data. On the ad front, the game did fantastic from the get-go. 40% of players engage with ads, and they watch an average of 3 ads per day. You can think of this as 40% of players monetizing in an alternate way. This is actually pretty big. And in a game like this, it's become a key revenue contributor. In this case, also 40% of our revenue. And usually there's the misconception that ads are gonna cannibalize your monetization. We hear this very frequently, but similar to Epic Skater, we did not see that happening here. In fact, if we break down the engagement between payers and non-payers, we see payers engage significantly more with ads than non-payers. This is our most valuable players getting the most value out of this system. So why does it work so well? Let's walk through the experience. it has great surfacing. This means that I can easily and always access the ads. There's a permanent button on the screen. It's a one click to get into the ads with a non-intrusive call to action whenever there is an ad available. And even though we had great surfacing, we're always trying to make improvements, and not all improvements mean more content like we did with Epic Skater. So we released an update where we made the ad button a little bit bigger and the hit target as well. And what we saw after that release was an increase in engagement. It was a 10% increase in engagement with ads. So small changes can actually have a big impact in your games. So as I was mentioning, AdCap is a game where you're constantly generating more money. You want to get richer and richer. And in this case, the bonus that you get from watching an ad is actually a 2x boost on all your investments. So all the money that you're generating gets a 2x boost. If you think about it from the player perspective, not watching an ad means actively choosing to progress slower through the game. And that's the reason why our players always want their ad multiplier on and going. With a reward like this, it actually became an integral part of the core loop of the game. And good fiction might sound like icing on the cake, but it really ties the whole experience together, delighting players every time they interact with ads. Every single person that I talk to that has played the game actually knows this line from the game. After all, advertising is the lifeblood of capitalism, right? Another big win that we had with AdCap is ads are integrated into the live operations of the game. This means that new content at limited time events also leverage this. You can see from the chart that we actually get added engagement every time we release a limited time event. And for these events, we see about 10 to 30% of our DAU engaging with ads. The best part is that, as you can see, the permanent content doesn't really see a big drop when that's happening. So this results in an increase in impressions. So what we see is events increase impressions anywhere from 40 to 100%. And remember, this is exactly what we're trying to maximize. Some lessons learned from this, it kind of just reiterated that ads have to be integrated into a core loop of the game. They have to give meaningful rewards that players really want to get. And delightful fiction is just going to encourage interaction even further. A quick game I want to talk about is Pocket Politics. This game just launched, as I was mentioning. It launched last Thursday, and it's a political-themed idle game. This was launched by Ultrabit, a game studio based in San Diego. So we're in the middle of launch, but so far the game was able to reach top 10 in the iPhone US charts and top 3 in free games. And it really followed the best practices that we just covered. And in addition to that, most of the soft launch was spent polishing and improving the ad implementation. So the results from doing this are actually, the ads are performing extremely well. And in fact, the stats are even better than AdCap. So in this case, we see over 60% of our DAU engaging with ads. They watch, on average, 7 ads per day. And it is also a key contributor for our revenue. It's 35% of our revenue right now. The last case study I'm going to cover is another runner-like game by Pomelo Games, a studio from Uruguay. This was launched last summer. And Bullet Boy is a game where you're launching Bullet Boy from barrel to barrel, trying to avoid obstacles, walls, moving targets. It's inspired on Donkey Kong Country, as you can see. Bullet Boy really brings together the learnings from both Epic Skater and AdCap. And a few things that we did with Bullet Boy was we leveraged interstitials. Again, those annoying pop-ups that you get in the middle of a game. We made sure that there were multiple opportunities to watch ads. So they were integrated into the core loop and they help you progress through the game. So that was the most important thing, especially for a runner, is helping you progress through the game. And at this point, we had standardized our stats tracking. And the reason I talk about this is because that's really powerful. We use the same tracking for all our games. We have almost 20 games with ads at this point, so we can really compare stats across all of our games and set benchmarks and figure out what the trends are. So walking through the experience, the first ad opportunity that we have is similar to Epic Skater, revive. So you watch an ad to revive. So if you hit a wall right before the last barrel, this really gives you a second chance to finish that level. And if you don't get to finish it, we give you a second opportunity to watch an ad to get a power-up. And this power-up will hopefully help you get through that level next time around. As I mentioned, we launched with interstitials. And initially, we were showing them every 4 deaths. So if you completed the level without dying, that wouldn't count. It would only count when you did not complete the level. We all know that there's common complaint, and that's why I've been mentioning this, that interstitials cause poor user experience, which will ultimately hurt retention. So due to this, we actually lowered the frequency. We started showing them just every 6 deaths. And what we saw was no change in retention. This gave us an indication that players were tolerant to a slight disruption in play. I will emphasize that placement of these is super important. In this case, after death, was actually perfect because it was not interrupting core gameplay or a good moment in the game. In terms of stats, the game did great. It got really good featuring, some editor's choice featuring in several Latin American countries. But the key here was to get all the ad opportunities optimized before global launch. This resulted in having great engagement. Between 30 to 40% of players engaged with ads, depending on the ad type. And unlike AdCap, Bullet Boy actually has very few opportunities for in-app purchases. So having a good ad implementation was even more crucial, and this resulted in 90% of the revenue coming from ads. So some lessons we learned out of this is adding more opportunities to watch ads is good. Get creative. Once again, integrate them into the core loop of the game. Help players progress through the game through watching ads. And in terms of interstitials, players are okay with a slight disruption, but they can be disruptive to the UX. So keep an eye on this. I would test the frequency and the placement of this, and if you can test it in the form of an A/B test or during test markets, even better. So remember, the goal is to maximize our ad revenue. How can we do that? By maximizing the percent of players engaging with your ads, the number of ads watched per day within reason. You don't want to be spamming players either. Make sure that there's an ad opportunity every session. This will really train players to watch an ad every single time they log in. You can do this by designing ads into your game. Again, integrate them into the core loop of the game. Make sure that you give meaningful rewards that will help players progress through the game. Surface them in places that make sense, that are easy to access, but they're not intrusive. And again, delightful fiction will tie all of this experience together, making ad watching a positive experience. And that's it. Thank you.
In Epic Skater, you mentioned there were coins, but they didn't have any value until you added a store. What were the coins used for before there was a store?
You can level up your tricks, so your tricks would become more effective. So you would do an ollie, you would unlock that, and you could level up the level of your ollie, and every time you landed on ollie, it would give you more points. But you got enough coins just from completing and like reaching higher scores that you could easily do that without watching ads and getting 5 coins.
Was wondering, do you have any learnings on how you control like frequency of how many videos they could watch and then cool down between periods?
Yeah, so we usually, we've done a lot of testing around this, and what we've found is that the best way to do any time of timer cooldown is figure out how many sessions a player is going to have in a day and make sure that at least they can watch one ad per session. So if you have a game where they're going to have 5 sessions, make sure that there's at least 5 ads that they can watch during a day, and that the cool time period kind of matches that behavior. One of the things that we've tested with both AdCap and Pocket Politics is actually allowing you to stack that time, so you can watch them consecutive, and then it'll last for, instead of 4 hours, it'll last for 8 hours if you watch 2. And that's been super successful just because as the session behavior changes as you level up in the game, they can still watch the same number of ads. So it kind of, as players age, we see the same engagement with ads, it doesn't drop off. Yeah, so for most of our games, we've actually moved away from rewarding a number of currency or coins, just because as players level up, if I offer you 5 coins at the beginning, it'll probably be really good and you're gonna get really excited and it's gonna help you a lot. But if you're level 20, 25 coins will be nothing. Like the amount of coins that I have to give you at that point, it just increases exponentially. So we've moved to more of a bonus structure. So most of our games do 8% bonus or a multiplier onto whatever rewards or resources that you're generating. So there's actually, one of our games, Battle Hand, they actually give you a bonus on the loot that you get from fighting a battle if you have your ad multiplier on. And it kind of scales as players scale.
That's a wrap.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.